If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year.
They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly if they wanted to.
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb.
Iran is gearing up to produce 25 bombs, atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a decade.
Iran will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years.
Once Saddam has nuclear weapons, the terror network will have nuclear weapons. Next thing you'll see is a nuclear bomb in the World Trade Center. If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's special stream. And I call it special because it is going to be a little bit longer as usual. That's why I started like 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes earlier, as our moderator is asking early today. Yes, our friend Red Access. First of all, thank you so much for being with us today in the live chat. And I had to start early because today is going to be in-depth, guys, and we're going to analyze a lot of aspects of this war. And I have collected the collection of articles in the mainstream press, in the American press, and it seems that there is a consensus among many of the so-called experts in the United States that Donald J. Trump has miscalculated. And of course, they're trying to scapegoat, they're trying to blame on other people. And now one of the people who they blame indirectly is Jared Kushner. And today I saw a photo of Jared Kushner. I didn't really know that this photo basically exists. And this is basically Jared Kushner with Ghislaine Maxwell. Of course, we are not surprised or shocked by these photos. And it doesn't mean that he has done any wrongdoing. However, it also, in my opinion, indicates that he is part of the club and he has married the daughter of Donald Trump. And basically, he converted the daughter of Donald Trump to Judaism. I'm not saying there is something wrong in that. However, it is somehow also an indication that this guy has come from a different family, from a different upbringing, from a different root, and he has taken the daughter of Donald Trump into a different religion. And I'm sure that this would have been completely scandalous, let's say, between quotation, for the American mainstream press had Ivanka Trump, for example, married a Muslim guy or a guy from a different religion other than the belonging to Judaism in this case. As I said, there is nothing wrong in that, but we know the double standards of the mainstream press in this regard. Guys, brace yourself for a great stream. I have been preparing since the early morning today, and I have collected lots of good materials for you to understand why Donald Trump miscalculated, why the United States is close to ending this war, and how the Iranian military adapted its strategy in this war and learned from the lessons of the 12-day war last year, and why I believe the Iranians are not going to stop the war, although the Americans want a ceasefire now. Why the Iranians do not want a ceasefire, and what is the strategy of the Iranians, and what they could reach if they continue in their successful military operations, but also the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which is having enormous repercussions, economic repercussions all around the world. So first things first, guys, there is a new article in the New Republic, basically, and the New Republic is basically calling the shots here and say, Trump went to war with Iran because Jared Kushner is a fool. Do Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner actually understand nuclear energy enough to describe Iran's capabilities to Donald Trump, let alone negotiate a non-proliferation agreement with Tehran? Most nuclear reactors that produce electricity only require that is enriched to between 3 to 5%. So if you have energy, let's say nuclear reactors, and you want to produce electricity with these nuclear reactors, you only need between 3 to 5% of enrichment. Highly enriched uranium is anything above 20%. And weapons-grade uranium is enriched above 90%. This is according to the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation. Now, Tehran's research reactor is a 60-year-old facility designed to use less than 20% enriched uranium, not intended for use outside of research and producing medicine. So the existing reactor in Tehran's research reactor is an old one. It's 60 years old, and it is basically designed to produce less than 20% of enriched uranium, which means it still is under the cap of not highly enriched uranium, but rather to produce and generate electricity. The Trump administration has claimed, without providing any evidence, that the facility was being used to covertly stockpile uranium that would become weapons grade. But unfortunately for Donald Trump and for all the liars in the White House, in the administration, in the DOD, and also, of course, all these talking heads on social media platforms who have been insisting that Iran is developing nukes, unfortunately for them, the nuclear experts aren't buying it. Now, Witkoff and Kushner chose not to have nuclear technical experts present during negotiations in Geneva. So they went basically to the negotiations with the Iranian side without any technical expert delegation among them. And look at this quote by Witkoff. Basically, Witkoff tried to defend himself and say, no, I have all the credentials, right? So, quote, he said, I wouldn't tell you I'm an expert in nuclear. I'm an expert in nuclear, okay? But I have learned quite a bit, and I have studied it and have read quite a bit about it. And I am competent to sit at the table and discuss it, and Jared Kushner as well. I think he has done he has asked probably ChatGPT a little bit about nuclear enrichment, and he has taken also probably the advice of ChatGPT to during the negotiations, and he knows something about it. He has read a few Google pages, he has read probably some Wikipedia pages about nuclear, because this is what he thinks is a nuclear. It's not about like a nuclear weapon, enrichment, electricity, or you're going to develop any sort of nukes. No, all these things do not matter. He just read a little bit on Wikipedia, and also he probably read on ChatGPT, and he believes now he has all the credentials to negotiate with the Iranians about their nuclear program, or they were not serious about the negotiations and they didn't want to speak about the technicalities of the Iranian nuclear program because they wanted to go to war. That's the truth of the matter, right? So ahead of Trump's military campaign in the Middle East, Witkoff claimed that Iran had amassed 460 kilograms of uranium at 60% enrichment, enough to potentially make 11 bombs within a few weeks. However, during negotiations, Iranians offered to turn over that uranium. So this 460 kilograms of uranium enriched at 60%, allegedly, the Iranians have said, okay, we will turn over them. We will turn over them and we will give this uranium back. And this is, of course, according to a Middle East diplomat who spoke to the MS Now. But we have also the testimony of the Omani foreign minister who was present during these negotiations because he was the mediator, basically. And he said, yes, the Iranians were very flexible and they were ready to give up on the enriched uranium. But the Americans proceeded and bombed Iran anyways. However, as we said, the Iranians told Witkoff and Kushner that they would only started enriching uranium after the Trump withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal in 2018. So before that, they didn't even have the 60% of enriched uranium. A senior Trump official had confirmed that Iranians talked about turning over materials to us, but talks ended abruptly when the U.S. launched a joint attack with Israel. Bravo, the United States. I think that's a great strategy for you. It's working so well in the Middle East nowadays. I have not seen a conflict since World War II where the Americans and the Israelis jointly have been humiliated as much as in this war. And I'm being very honest with you. And I've been one of the people who have told you during our Syriana Analysis shows as well, or on my X account, I didn't believe that Iran would withstand and would be successfully managing this war to the extent that the Americans would want a ceasefire agreement. I didn't expect that. It was a surprise for everyone, at least for myself. It was surprising how Iran well managed this war. They absorbed the attacks and they retaliated, and they have hurt the US where it hurts the most, and that is the global economy. Of course, the military retaliation, we're going to speak about them today. There is a lot of details emerging nowadays about how the Iranians have basically blinded the front alarm systems of the US in the hosting countries in the Persian Gulf monarchies. And by doing so, it has blinded Israel itself, and they're unable to see the upcoming missiles from the Iranian side, or also the drones in this case. And if you don't believe me, guys, that Jared Kushner is an idiot and a fool, and he convinced Donald Trump to go to war basically against Iran, this is Trump himself basically confessing and saying yesterday, or 2 days ago, he said, based on what Jared Kushner told me, I thought Iran would attack us. Take a look.
The situation was very quickly approaching the point of no return, and the United States found it intolerable, in my opinion, based on what Steve and Jared and Pete and others were telling me, Marco, so involved, that I thought that they were going to attack us. I thought they would, if we didn't do this at the time we did it, I think they had in mind to attack us. And
so, guys, this guy now has been told by Jared Kushner, Witkoff, and the other ultra-Zionist advisors that Iran was going to attack us and that we have to attack them. And he had the feeling that Iran will attack them. And this is something very, I would say, dangerous, because nowadays, what is the use of the intel community? Now, look, the intel community, intelligence community in the United States are lying from head to toe. Everybody knows that. But they're lying to the public. And it is very difficult for them to lie to their president, right? So it is very difficult to lie to their president in this case, especially when it comes to a war of this magnitude that could turn the balance of power in the Middle East in favor of Iran. And nowadays, guys, this is the most detrimental and strategic conflict in the Middle East, I would argue, since 1948. Since 1948, this is the most detrimental and strategic conflict. It will set new rules of engagement. It will set new deterrence measurements for all the players in the region, depending on, it varies and it depends on which country has scored more points. But the bigger players, especially Saudi Arabia, UAE, Iran, Qatar, Israel, and the United States, there is going to be definitely a new security architecture after this war. Depends on the outcome of this conflict, of course, which is not going well for the Americans, which is not going well for the Israelis. And we will also see that the intelligence community, which I mentioned, that Donald Trump probably preferred to listen to Jared Kushner and Witkoff in this case, that the presence of solid analysis and information is important for the politicians to take correct decision making, especially when it comes to war and peace, right? So, or some people may argue and say that Trump has made a big miscalculation, and now they are looking for a scapegoat, and they're looking for someone to blame the failures of this conflict, and this could be Jared Kushner or Witkoff or some other people. And believe me, the person who is not going to be blamed officially is Donald Trump. They're not going to blame the president of the United States, or he would be impeached. So probably they will try to push someone under the bus, and this someone is probably going to be Witkoff, in my opinion. I just want to check something. Okay. Anyways, in the live chat. Now we have also, guys, unfortunately, the Speaker of the White House. She's trying to, of course, clean the dirt under the rug of Donald Trump. And she also says that Donald Trump had a feeling about this. So basically, we are going to war against a regional power based on feelings and not based on solid intel information.
The president said yesterday for the first time that he had to strike Iran because he believes that Iran was going to strike U.S. targets within 7 days. And then he then bumped that down later to 3 days. Where is he getting that?
That's not the first time the president has said that he chose to launch Operation Epic Fury because he felt as though Iran was going to strike the United States and our assets in the region first.
Moment. He had a feeling.
Well, that's not the first time the president has said that he chose to launch Operation Epic Fury because he felt as though Iran was going to strike the United States and our assets in the region first. Again, I addressed this in the last briefing. This was a feeling the president had based on facts. Facts provide.
Moment. First of all, you do not really. Okay, so somebody delivered me information, and I could build a conviction about it. You don't build a feeling based on solid information. This is completely untrue. You cannot go to war based on a feeling. You go based on a conviction and a plan and a strategy and an exit strategy. It looks like they have not only built their war case based on feelings, but also they didn't really consider an exit strategy in this case. What if things go south? What do we do if Iran retaliated in this manner? What do we do if Iran attacked the oil tankers or closed the Strait of Hormuz or attacked the energy infrastructure in the Gulf countries or attacked any of our military bases in these countries? It looks like the Americans didn't really calculate well that this type of retaliation is going to happen from the Iranian side. Otherwise, I personally really find a hard time to believe that the president of the United States is building a case for war based on feelings, right? If that is the case, then we are completely screwed. We're done. If they go to war against Iran, which could set the balance of power and shift the balance of power to the opposite direction based on a feeling, then the Americans truly having a great president. Like the amount of winning in these 2 weeks after this war, I mean, I'm very tired of winning for the Americans. There's lots of winning happening for the Americans in the region, economically, security-wise, military-wise. Their allies are being pounded. Their eyes are being blinded, aka their radars. Lots of things are happening in the region, and it has costed the United States, up until this moment, only the military expenditure. I'm talking about only the military expenditure, which means the military hardware and the ammunition that you used against Iran, around $11 billion. That's only the military expenditure, let alone the losses in the region. They have billions of dollars worth of losses in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia, in Bahrain, because Iran has hit many of the satellite and advanced technological equipment which were aimed at Iran, spying on Iran, and also detecting the missiles and the drones coming from Iran itself. But as I said, as I promised you guys, this is going to be all covered today in this show. We're going to cover lots of details of these Iranian attacks against the American assets in the region and how much they cost and how tragic it is for the American forces in the region. If you guys joined later in this show, yesterday's show with Marwa has unfortunately been suppressed by YouTube, maybe because of her name, maybe they are suppressing her, or maybe because of the topic. So sometimes YouTube suppresses some of these streams. If you're watching this and you like the content, the kind thing to do from your side is just hit the like button, thumbs up as you're watching this. Now, the true answer of this war in Iran, war against Iran, is of course confessed in this interview with an American senator, and they have asked him basically on MS Now, why does he think the US has gone to war against Iran? And this is the truth of the matter.
What is the reason, if the nuclear program isn't the reason, as poor Ted Cruz, I never thought I'd put those three words together, is over there talking about nukes? And we know that the intelligence did not suggest that an attack was imminent from Iran. What is left? Why are we at war with Iran?
Mm-hmm.
Great question. Yeah, great question. I mean, the simplest explanation, might be the one that they gave 24 hours in, that they've kind of tried to backtrack since then, which is that Israel made us do it.
Israel made us do it. Israel made us do it.
He decided on this timeline. Netanyahu decided he wanted to attack, and he convinced Trump to join him by scaring Trump into believing that the U.S. assets in the region would be at risk, and so Trump was better off just joining Netanyahu. I hope that.
I mean, in this case, when they mention Netanyahu, don't you also think that Jared Kushner is working for Netanyahu? I mean, it's totally possible that he's working for Netanyahu, and he was the one who whispered in the ears of Donald Trump and gave him the feeling to go to war.
Isn't the full explanation, but you're right. As we are now hearing that the nuclear program is not part of their targeting campaign, as we're now more confident that even harder line leadership is taking hold, as the Strait of Hormuz is still being shut down, even as we get their Navy, what's left as the explanation? It might just be that Israel forced our hand. And how weak does that make the United States look? How weak are we if our allies can force us into wars of choice that are bad for U.S. national?
It's not only the allies of the United States, my friend, because other allies of the United States in the region, in the Persian Gulf monarchies, they were really suspicious about this war. Some of them say that Saudi Arabia has been on board. We're not sure about that. But all in all, these Persian Gulf monarchies are so vulnerable and so exposed, and their militaries are basically, they better fight on camels with swords better than using these tanks and helicopters and the F-16s and the THAAD missiles and all these defensive capabilities that they have after spending trillions of dollars basically on this equipment in their own countries. And then when you see them going to war against Yemen, for example, and fighting against the Ansarullah movement, who were fighting with their AK-47s, RPGs, and sandals, and you see how their ass were kicked in Yemen, and they lost the war in Yemen. And then when you see Yemenis are sending drones or ballistic missiles into Saudi airspace, and the Saudis cannot even use these Patriot systems or the THAAD systems, etc., and some of them were even hitting themselves to the ground, you know that these countries are not capable of fighting. I have seen recently a video of a Saudi journalist who is not in opposition to the Saudi ruling family, but he was talking openly and very honestly and saying, look, we don't have the might to fight against Iran. He said, if Al-Hashd al-Sha'bi, the PMU, came with their vehicles to Saudi Arabia, they would occupy it in a matter of a few days. So we're not match for this fight. So why do we fight against Iran anyways? They could occupy us in a matter of a few days, right? Now the Americans and the Israelis have started the war, and they brought these countries into the equation, and these countries host American bases, and they're coming under attacks. The energy prices have skyrocketed, and their water reserves are very, very small. If Iran does any of the things that Israel is doing and hit one of these desalination plants, you will need emergency water delivery to the people there, right? This is not a joke. It's not a joke. This was a huge, huge American miscalculation, in my opinion. I'm struggling to find, please guys, correct me if I'm wrong in the live chat. Since World War II, I haven't seen. Kevork is one of the only YouTube hosts I feel like I could hang out with. John, if you're in Berlin one day, just hit me up. Why not? We could drink a coffee. I'm not an alcohol drinker, but if you drink beer, why not? I would definitely invite you. So since World War II, I'm struggling to find an example of an American war, let alone joint US-Israeli war, where it ended so bad for the Americans, to the extent that I think this would shift the balance of power in the region, to the extent that we would see the birth of a new security architecture in the Middle East after this war. The same way the Russians are asking for a new security architecture in Eastern Europe after their war with Ukraine. John says he's coming to theater show. you have my email in on YouTube. If you go to my YouTube account and you see this biography or the description of the channel, there is the email there. You can send me an email, and we could stay in touch, and I would invite you for a coffee. So one of the things that the Americans didn't expect for the Iranians to do, although the Iranians were like, during the breakfast and lunch and dinner and snack, they were talking about closing the Strait of Hormuz. If you attack us, if there is an existential threat against us, if you kill our leader, we will close the Strait of Hormuz. They were saying every day, but they thought that the Iranians are bluffing, and a big mistake. And now it seems that US Intel, and this is a US intelligence agency, claims that Iran has started dropping naval mines into the Strait of Hormuz because apparently missiles, drones, and regional chaos aren't. Of course, this is Mario Naufal. He is just being a Zionist as he is all the time. So this is a video basically explaining the issue with the Strait of Hormuz and the possibility and the reports that Iranians may have mined the Strait of Hormuz to stop the delivery of any tankers, oil tankers, except in exception for, by the way, for the Indians and for the Chinese.
Iran has begun mining the Strait of Hormuz. Naval mines are now appearing in the shipping lanes of one of the world's most important oil routes. Only 9 ships have crossed this strait since the war began, and now the risk has just become far more dangerous. According to recent U.S. intelligence reports, Iran has started deploying naval mines in the Strait of Hormuz, raising fears that this narrow passage could soon become a prolonged maritime hazard. This escalation comes as tensions between Iran, the United States, and Israel intensified after strikes that began on February 28, 2026. Within days, ships in and around the strait began coming under attack. Insurance costs surged, shipping companies pulled back, and tanker captains started avoiding the route altogether. Traffic collapsed quickly. Tanker movements through the strait dropped by more than 90%, leaving hundreds of vessels waiting outside the Persian Gulf, while thousands of seafarers remain trapped in increasingly dangerous waters. Now the mines are raising the stakes even further. So far, intelligence suggests only a few dozen mines have been deployed, likely placed by small boats capable of carrying just 2 or 3 mines at a time. But the real concern is Iran's capacity. Analysts estimate the country still has thousands of naval mines and the ability to deploy many more, potentially turning the strait into a dangerous minefield. And clearing those mines would not be easy. Even with modern minesweeping technology, it could take weeks or even months to fully secure the passage. Washington has responded with growing urgency. U.S. President Donald Trump has demanded the mines be removed immediately, warning of severe military consequences if they are not. Tehran, however, is refusing to back down. Iranian officials say the strait is not officially closed, but warn that ships linked to the United States or Israel may not pass safely. Senior figures such as Ali Larijani have also warned that hostile vessels entering these waters could face serious consequences. With traffic already down by more than 90% and only 9 ships passing through in recent weeks, the Strait of Hormuz has become one of the most dangerous flashpoints on Earth. So what do you think will happen next?
So take this report, by the way, with a grain of salt. We really don't know if this is correct, that they have actually mined the Strait of Hormuz. Because up until this moment, what the Iranians are doing, basically, they are threatening these tankers with drones, or they are talking with the captain and asking them to leave. It's a war zone, basically. And they're allowing the Chinese and the Indian tankers to pass through. So there is definitely other capabilities to stop and block the Strait of Hormuz, including, I've seen a footage of hundreds of them. I don't know where is this, if I can find this stuff now. Just a second, let me see. They are like sea drones, you know? Iran, sea drones. They're like sea drones. Let me check. I've seen a video yesterday, man, those were like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. And what they do, basically, they're like an unmanned drones, but under the water. And they could go and just hit any of these ships if they want to. I couldn't find the video now. But the Iranians have different military tools to exert their dominance over the Strait of Hormuz and block the rest of the tankers from coming in or coming out. And this is one of the most important trade and energy routes in the world. So, in my opinion, the Israelis have the Samson option, which is we're going to nuke the shit out of you if there is an existential threat against us. The Iranians do not need to have this. They can choke the global economy. They can spike the energy prices. They could harm the US economy, European economy, and the rest of the economies. Meanwhile, they're allowing China and India to buy fuel from them. And the Americans aren't going to come and destroy Chinese and Indian tankers, right, in this case. So I think it's very important to shed light on the Strait of Hormuz thing, because what the Iranians are doing here, they are redrawing the balance of power in the region with a multifolded strategy, one of which is a military. The second one could be diplomatic because they are talking. And the third one is this economic pressure. The Americans have the dollar dominance. They can sanction countries, they can sanction people, they can impoverish them. And the Iranians do not have the same capacity to sanction them back, but they have the capacity to choke the global economy. It's like a Samson option for them. By the way, guys, Ehsan Safarnajat, I saw his name now multiple times in the chat. I have contacted him everywhere. Like I have his contact, etc. He's offline. Ehsan has been offline since the day one of the war. If anybody knows anything about him, if anybody can speak with him, if you are in Iran, I would like to know if he's okay. You know, I'm worried of him. I've sent him on X, on Telegram. He's not online. He's not posting also on X. So if you know him, if you know any other way of contacting him, if you know someone in Iran who knows him, please let us know if he's okay. Like, I would like to have him back on the show. Anyways, so speaking of Strait of Hormuz, guys, hello, Johan Habibi, how are you doing? Speaking of Strait of Hormuz, this is a very important article in the Wall Street Journal. Iran's control of Hormuz means it is exporting more oil today than before the war. Imagine they have basically closed the Strait of Hormuz, but they have been sending more oil to the outside world since the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, the Iranians, right? So Iran is exporting more oil through the Strait of Hormuz than before the war, showing it is in control of a strategic waterway that it has closed off to the rest of the region's oil producers. Imagine, since the war started on February 28, 7 tankers have loaded oil off the Iranian coast. Iran's export levels can vary week to week, but the recent increase shows that unlike other producers in the region, their shipments are unimpeded and that China hasn't lost its appetite for Tehran's crude oil. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, threatened to attack any ship trying to cross the strait since the US and Israel launched airstrikes at the start of the conflict, scaring off ships carrying oil and goods between the wider world and the Persian Gulf, where about a third of global oil production takes place. The crisis has sparked fears that a doomsday scenario was finally coming to pass, with millions of barrels of oil coming off the market every day. If the strait remains blocked for 2 more weeks, Gulf oil supplies could be cut by about 3.8 million barrels a day. This is according to the JP Morgan. More than 3% of global production will be down. Hamuyun Falak-Shahi, head of crude oil analysis at Kepler. Kepler is a monitoring, they monitor the oil shipments around the world. It's a platform. So the head of the crude oil analysis platform said only military escorts, he means by the United States, a US-Israeli ceasefire, or an Iranian capitulation would prompt shippers to resume transit. So the first one, military escort, is not going to happen. I'm going to now show you what the Americans think about it. So forget about the military escorts. America is not going to send any military escorts to force Iran to allow these ships to move through the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian capitulation is not going to happen. So what is it, the other one? US-Israeli ceasefire, which the Iranians aren't accepting. Do you see where are we now? Do you see the difficulty of the situation for the Americans and for the global economy? Not for China, by the way. Imagine that we have three scenarios after which the oil could restart flowing through the Strait of Hormuz. One, Iranian capitulation, forget about it. Second, American-Israeli ceasefire, which the Iranians are rejecting. And the first one is military escorts by the United States, which is, again, not going to happen. And the evidence for it is overwhelming nowadays, and many American officials are saying, basically, the companies, the U.S. Navy, for example, tell shipping industry Hormuz escorts to not possible for now. So they don't believe that escorts is possible for these shipments in the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. Navy has refused near daily requests from the shipping industry for military escorts through the Strait of Hormuz since the start of the war on Iran. They say that the risk of attacks is too high for now. The U.S. Navy has held regular briefings with shipping and oil industry counterparts and has said during those briefings it is unable, America is unable to provide escorts for the time being. So make it as you wish, guys. Iran is not going to capitulate. They're not going to accept ceasefire agreement with the United States and Israel because fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 10 times, shame on me, basically. They have been engaged in a good faith talk with the Americans and the Israelis, and every time they talk to them, they came under attacks. It's not going to happen until redrawing the security architecture in the region. So America is now considered what? Imagine, those articles are not, by the way, coming from pro-Iranian outlets. This is the Financial Times. The Financial Times says, America has become an agent of chaos in world energy markets. Ooh, okay. The war with Iran is merely the most recent case of America operating as a destabilizing force in global oil markets. Iran may not be physically blocking the Strait of Hormuz, but few captains or their insurers are brave enough to sail through an open war zone. The effects of America's war of choice, like, do you see the terminologies and the choice of words? Like, they literally saying, this is America's war of choice. And the effects of this war of choice will be felt most acutely in Asia, where Japan, Taiwan, and other US allies are heavily dependent on Gulf fuel. In Europe, still barely recovering from the aftermath of Ukraine energy shortfalls, prices have skyrocketed. Ironically, these effects are already being felt by the American consumer as well. The Trump administration is looking for mitigation strategies, including loosening sanctions on Russia and releases from the US or G7 strategic petroleum reserves. But such measures are unlikely to have a significant effect on prices if the war continues for weeks to come. It increasingly seems that pressure from voters and markets feeling the pinch of increased energy costs may lead Trump to search for an off-ramp from this conflict. So this pressure that the Iranians have imposed on the Americans and the pain on the global economy may force Trump to search for an off-ramp from this conflict. Pushback from US allies and adversaries alike has already begun. Trump may soon back down, but while I think there is some grammatical mistake here, but while he is not the first administration to wield US power in a way that undermines global energy markets, the consequences of this war of choice are incalculable. Well, you will be surprised the number of articles this week criticizing Donald Trump, including none other than the New York Times. Imagine, the New York Times says how Trump and his advisors miscalculated Iran's response to war. So, three authors, they argue and say on February 18, as President Trump weighed whether to launch military attacks on Iran, Chris Wright, the energy secretary of his own administration, told a journalist he was not concerned that the looming war might disrupt oil supplies in the Middle East and wreak havoc in the energy markets. They didn't expect it. The extent of that miscalculation was laid bare in recent days as Iran threatened to fire at commercial oil tankers transiting the Strait of Hormuz, the strategic choke point through which all ships must pass on their way out of the Persian Gulf. The episode is emblematic of how much Mr. Trump and his advisors misjudged how Iran would respond to a conflict that the government in Tehran sees as an existential threat. After Trump administration officials gave a closed-door briefing to lawmakers on Tuesday, Senator Christopher Murphy, Democrat of Connecticut, I can't spell the name of the city, Connecticut. He said on social media that the administration had no plan for the Strait of Hormuz and didn't know how to get it safely back open. Inside the administration, some officials are growing pessimistic about the lack of a clear strategy to finish the war, but they have been careful not to express that directly to the president. Are they afraid? So they thought that Iran is bluffing and they're not going to close the Strait of Hormuz. And they thought, like the last times, that we were really worried that Iran is not responding to lots of events happened in the region. And we were saying, what is happening? Like, it looks like Iran is a paper tiger, right? Many people said Iran is a paper tiger and that they're bluffing and they wouldn't do anything and they wouldn't retaliate. Our concern was like, we knew that they have the capacity and the capability to respond, but they didn't. The people were asking why Iran is not responding. Apparently, Iran was preparing for this strategic war. They knew it's coming. They were not bluffing. And they made everybody look bad and incorrect. And I have to say, personally, I misanalyzed Iranian response. And I said that Iran is now between two bitter choices. One is war, and the other is compromise and concessions to the Americans. I mean, I'm not completely wrong on that, but the situation was very clear. It's war or concessions. I thought that the Iranians would go for concessions. But the Israelis, they went to war against Iran, and now Iranians do not have any other choice but to fight. They have to fight not only to survive, they have to fight to change the security architecture in the region, and because there is an existential threat against them. And many people misread the Iranian people and how proud they are and how great civilization they are. And I think that the arrogance and the ignorance of American and other Western officials, these two characteristics combined, they have made this war of choice a disastrous one for them, for the global economy, and they made it possible for Iran to score points against its enemies. Meanwhile, it was retreating from different fires in the region, and it has withdrew from different fires in the region. So basically, running out of time and running out of options, basically, it looks like, according to the Monitor this time, the Monitor claims that the hourglass in the war with Iran appears to have turned, with Tehran showing no signs of collapse, the mass protest of several months ago showing no signs of reawakening, and the mobilization of the Kurds or other minorities no longer seeming relevant. The Americans as well as the Israelis are looking for alternatives that will allow them to declare victory at some point and stand down. I think that's the only way that they're going to back off of this war, to claim that the goal of this war was to degrade the military capabilities of Iran and that they have somehow achieved these goals. Because listen to what Donald Trump says, that we destroyed their navy, we destroyed their air force, we did this and that. We destroyed 50% of their launchers. They can no longer fire. Mario Naufal on X keeps repeating bullshit and Zionist talking points that 90% of Iranian missile capacities and capabilities are gone and they're no longer able to fire on Israel. And then you turn on your social media and you see like missiles are raining over Tel Aviv, raining. And this type of missiles that this time they're using, we haven't seen in the 12-day war. Those are some scary shit that they are firing against the Israelis, and they're hitting the targets precisely. So I don't think a lot of reporting about this war against Iran is really accurate. And many people on also social media outlets, I'm mentioning Mario Naufal because he's very prominent nowadays. And it looks like we have now a new mainstream media on X. And these people are doing what the mainstream media used to do in the past. And these people will lose credibility once this war is over, because people will see through their lies and their BS and their manipulation, and that probably they were paid to post this stuff. Now, of course, Mario has invited me, not him, because he has, his page is run by his producers, right, on X. He has a team. They made it like an agency in Dubai. He invited me several times to the spaces that he hosts. He's not present there, but he hosts. And it's like, in Arabic, we say, Hammam Tasedea. Hammam Tasedea. Nobody knows who is speaking. Nobody knows when you should speak. Nobody knows how much time you have to speak. The moment you speak, somebody speaks over you. The moment you say something controversial, one of the producers intervene and stops you from talking and asks you a different question. Mario Naufal. And why would I participate in a space where you have 10,000 people, 50 people are speaking over each other, and you have very limited time to explain? If Mario Naufal, if you Mario Naufal want me to come to and to listen to my opinion, you should host me one-on-one, and there would be just a conversation. I don't want to come to spaces and participate alongside thousands of people. Everybody is speaking over each other. That's not my style. I just want my time. I want calm environment to speak and make a point, make an argument. You can, of course, Mario can argue against me. That's no problem. So nowadays we have this guy's new report by Axios. And remember, every time I have to make a disclaimer that Axios is basically an Israeli outlet. They have close ties to the Israeli regime. And they say that the Trump administration asked Israel on Monday not to carry out further strikes on energy facilities in Iran, particularly oil infrastructure. Now, the Israeli strikes, as you remember, Guy, blanketed Tehran a few days ago, a city of 10 million people, in toxic black smoke and acid rain, raising urgent health warnings for ordinary Iranians. The U.S. messages were conveyed at a senior political level and to IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir, an Israeli official said. The Trump administration cited 3 reasons for its request, according to a source with knowledge of the matter. 1, what are the reasons? The first reason is such strikes harm the Iranian public, a large portion of which opposes the regime. BS, they don't care about the Iranian people. 2, Trump aims to cooperate with Iran's oil sector after the war. This is true, similar to the approach he has taken with Venezuela, but it's not going to happen because they're losing the war. 3, the strikes could trigger massive Iranian retaliatory attacks on energy infrastructure across Gulf states. That's the reason. That's basically the main reason. They are worried that Iran would retaliate against the energy infrastructure across the Gulf states, and then the barrel of fuel would reach to $200. Iran attacked Gulf energy facilities with drones earlier in the war, but didn't cause significant or irreversible damage. The U.S. concern is that a new round of strikes on Iranian oil could change the calculus and send prices even higher. So everything he said about caring about the Iranian people, BS, right? They don't care about the Iranian people. They don't care at all. What they care is that Iran may attack the energy infrastructure in the Gulf and the prices would skyrocket even further. Also, it is a wet dream of the US and Israel and the Brits in this case to cooperate with the energy companies in Tehran, separate from or independent from the Iranian government. That's not going to happen. Forget about it. This is a wet dream. They needed the energy resources in Iran very badly due to the AI competition with China. and that they needed these energy resources to basically deliver enough energy to the AI projects. And this war of choice basically has gone too wrong and too south for them now, even to try, after diplomatic discussions with Iran, to benefit from Iran's energy. And this is, again, now I bring the example of Mario Naufal, because the other day he posted something and he said, no, this is not only Israel's war against Iran. That's not the case. This is also our war. We need the energy of Iran for our AI projects, because the future of the competition with the AI competition with China would be determined after this war. Like if they win Iran, then they would be ahead of China in the AI war, because they need the energy in Iran. And if they lose this war, then they would be behind China, right? And I asked and I said, did you guys try cooperation? Like, do you see this mindset, this imperialist mindset of these people? That can't they think outside the imperial mindset? Can't they say, okay, you are a sovereign nation, you have your oil resources, we would like to cooperate with you, we will buy from you, we need this oil, we will buy from you. Have you tried cooperation rather than stealing other people's resources? Many people are asking this question. This is what China is doing with many countries around the world. China also needs the earth minerals, the rare earth minerals. China also needs the components for the electronic cars, the EVs that they're producing. China also needs fuel. China also needs the energy resources. China also needs lots of things from Iran, from Venezuela, from different countries around the world, and Africa. But China is cooperating with them, is buying from them, and is building their infrastructure. What China is also doing, for example, in African countries, they need certain earth minerals. They take these earth minerals and they build them infrastructure. They build them water dams. They build them electricity generators. They build them highways. They build them schools, universities. They build them job opportunities. And that's how they're gaining the hearts and the minds of the people. Call it whatever you like. Many people do not like China. I don't care about it. That's not my point. But China is doing a lot better with this, what they call third world countries, compared to America. America is coming, bullying, harassing, attacking, threatening, sanctioning, bombing, killing, stealing, looting. How do you think the people would feel about the United States after all these wrongdoings and all this attitude with the people? You just killed 180 children in Iran. How do you think the Iranian people would feel about the United States? Has China killed 180 children in Iran? No. So why would the Iranian companies deal with the Americans and not with the Chinese? I think it's not even... You don't really need to be a genius to understand that there are people with dignity. You have people with conscience and dignity and patriotism and caring, that they don't want to deal with the Americans if America do not change course and behave and its behavior with these countries. I think United States should learn from China and change course and cooperate instead of looting and stealing. Maybe one time in the history of this last 400 years, one of these Western countries changed course, and probably, I'm saying, this would also change the mentality of the people who are calling for stealing from Iran rather than cooperating with Iran. So, as we have argued several times today in today's show, guys, it looks like the American administration didn't only miscalculate with Iran, but also the Iranians have learned the lessons of the past war waged against them. And this is again in the New York Times. Iranian military shows it knows how to adapt. The US officials. The Iranian military is adjusting its tactics as the US-Israeli bombing campaign progresses. even as the Trump administration insists that the US is winning the war. In the 11 days since the conflict began, Iran has targeted key American air defense and radar systems in the region, according to US military officials. Iranian-backed militias have attacked hotels frequented by American troops, demonstrating that Iran was aware that the Pentagon was housing troops in hotels in the region. The Iranian military, the official said, appears to be targeting what it views as American vulnerabilities, for example, interceptors and air defenses meant to guard troops and assets in the region. During the 12-day war last year with Iran, both the United States and Israel saw severe dents in the country's air defense stockpiles. The US launched 100 to 250 THAAD interceptors during that war, which constituted 20 to 50% of Pentagon's inventory. The US military also used 80 SM-3 missiles, nearly a fifth of its stockpile, the report said. But in the past, Iran gave ample warning before launching retaliatory strikes. Nothing like that is happening now. In recent days, Iran has an early warning radar system at Al Udeid, this is in Qatar, damaging a sophisticated radar. US military communication infrastructure is highly classified, making it difficult to determine which exact systems may have been affected. But the targeted locations appear to indicate that Iran was aiming to disrupt the US military's ability to communicate and coordinate. 50 miles northeast at the Ali Al Salim Air Base in Kuwait, at least 6 buildings or structures adjacent to satellite communications infrastructure were damaged or destroyed. In the past, Iran directed all of its drone attacks at Israel. Not so this time. Iran has fired thousands of cheap one-way attack drones at American allies and assets in Qatar, in Kuwait, in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, in Iraq, and in Bahrain. So Iran is demonstrating every day that the killing of the country's supreme leader at the beginning of the war has not totally crippled its ability to fight. Iran is not acting like a decapitated regime. Well, this Iranian approach and learning from the war of the 12-day war of last year, and also the miscalculation of the Trump administration and the Israeli adventurism in Iran, has basically brought the region into deadlock. And with the spike of the energy prices and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the entire global economy is now at the mercy of Iran. That's why, just before I started this live stream, by the way, with you guys, Trump told Axios that there is practically nothing left to target in Iran. And I would call it a BS, a complete BS. They say that there is nothing left to target in Iran is the way to come down from the ladder. In Arabic, they say there is like a metaphor that the goat climbs over the tree and then the goat cannot come down the tree, right? So you need someone to bring him down the tree. And in order for them to come down the tree, basically in this case, they asked Iran for a ceasefire, and the Iranians said, no, we're not interested in a ceasefire. We don't want a ceasefire with you. Which means that the Americans have to find a way to leave this war by saying and claiming victory over Iran, by claiming that there is no more targets left. We just destroyed and decimated their military, we destroyed their navy, their air force, their missile capabilities. They will make up anything to sell this as a victory to withdraw from this war. But if the Americans withdraw from this war and leave the Israelis alone, they will be pounded. There is no way for Israel to survive this war without the Americans, which means the Israelis also have to stop bombing Iran. But the Iranians aren't interested in stopping this war against this conflict against the Americans and the Israelis, because they are insisting on one thing. First, deterrence, meaning that we will punish the enemy. This is according to the Iranians. Will punish the enemy to the extent that they would not even think in the future to attack us. And not only us, this time they want to include Hezbollah into the equation. And secondly, they're talking about the military bases of the Americans in the region and telling them they have to go. They have to go. And I'm not saying that they will succeed in this, but what they will succeed is, or what they would try to succeed is, okay, you can keep your military installations, but pure defensive. You can have your THAAD missiles, you can have your Patriot missiles, you could have anything that is defensive, because we're not interested in attacking these bases anyways, unless you use these military bases to attack us, which means all these technologies that spies on Iran, all these offensive missiles, all these offensive fighter jets and missiles stationed in these countries are the ones that have to be removed. The same way the Russians are telling the Americans, nuclear weapons and all these long-range missiles are going to go to prior to the 1991 expansion, I believe, of NATO. This is the line that they're drawing. I'm not sure, but they want them to go back to Germany. So no Poland, no Romania, no Hungary or Ukraine, or in this case. Are they going to be successful or not? This is what they are insisting on. So now the foreign minister of Iran, Araghchi, he looks very tired here. And he has made this statement basically about this exact case and why they are not interested in a ceasefire agreement.
Of course, the door for diplomacy should be always keep open, but this is not the case right now. My country has been under attack, under aggression, and we have to respond based on our legitimate right of self-defense. And we will do that as long as needed and necessary.
So this is, we will do it as long as necessary. And then you have Marandi is basically saying similar things, but with a higher tone.
In other words, the Iranians will push this war until the United States and the West recognize that attacking Iran is not an option. Not now, and not ever again. So this war is not going to end anytime soon, unless the other side capitulates. And even when the other side backs down, there will be changes. Iran will not accept Arab family dictatorships hosting US bases that can harm us. And they will have to pay compensation for the slaughter and the murder that has been carried out. None of these regimes are innocent. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, none of them are innocent. All of them host US bases. All of those US bases have been used to conspire against Iran. All of them have been used to kill Iranians, murder Iranians. And not just Iranians. They've been used to kill people in Yemen. They've been used to kill people in Lebanon in a different way. So this war will end with a shift in the balance of power in this region. The axis of resistance will no longer accept a hanging sword above it. That sword has to be broken, and it will be broken, God willing.
So what they're demanding is a new balance of power, new security architecture, meaning a new deterrence for Iran. And in this case, I want to refer you to brilliant analysis written by Amal Saad, who is an expert, as I said, on the Middle East, Iran, and Hezbollah. And she basically, as we say in Arabic, she spilled the butter of the story. And she says, deterrence or nothing. Iran's logic of total war or total ceasefire. Iran's rejection of a ceasefire is not simply a disagreement over timing or terms, but reflects a challenge to the entire framework through which negotiations with the United States have been conducted for decades. Iran is refusing to negotiate from a position in which its own capabilities are treated as the problem to be solved or contained, whether its nuclear program, missile arsenal, or its regional alliances and support for the axis of resistance, and is instead insisting that the issue at stake is US and Israeli aggression and the regional order that underpins it. In other words, Tehran seeks to overturn the long-standing US framework that treats negotiations essentially as arms control over Iran and behavioral disciplining, and to redefine the negotiating agenda as one concerning the existing regional security order and the conduct of the US and Israel. This amounts to a struggle over agenda-setting power, or the framing of the bargaining space itself. Tehran is refusing to operate within the negotiating parameters. Washington has historically imposed and is instead seeking to fundamentally reshape them, moving the objective from ceasefire management to a definitive end to the war, while keeping its political identity as a revolutionary Islamic republic and not merely an Islamic republic intact. Iran is also keen to ensure that the US and Israel's weaponization of diplomacy as a method of warfare becomes very costly for them. Twice now, in June 2025 and again in the current round, the US has used the cover of active diplomacy to strike Iran directly, reinforcing the perception that negotiations have functioned less as a path to conflict resolution than as an instrument of subterfuge, or it's like a sabotage. For Iranian officials, this only deepens the view that Iran's long-practiced strategic patience has been met not with good faith negotiation, but with strategic deception. Iran also wants to ensure that negotiations can no longer be used to reproduce the cycle of war itself. Iranian leaders have been explicit about this shift. Parliament Speaker of Iran, for example, declared that Tehran is absolutely not seeking a ceasefire, arguing that Iran sustains its position through the recurring cycle of war negotiation, ceasefire, and then war again. While other senior officials have similarly indicated that Iran will only consider ending the war under conditions that ensure such a conflict cannot be easily resumed. As such, Tehran's objective is not a temporary suspension of hostilities, but a decisive settlement that changes the strategic conditions that have allowed war to recur. In this context, the conventional assumption in conflict resolution theory that negotiations become possible or ripe once both sides reach a mutually hurting stalemate, where neither can win outright and the costs of continued war become intolerable, doesn't apply here. Iran's strategic aim is to absorb whatever pain is necessary for as long as required to ensure that the outcome of total war translates into a deterrence restoring outcome that yields what might be described as a total ceasefire, which is a comprehensive settlement in which the costs of resuming the conflict become prohibitive. Such an outcome would be qualitatively different from previous arrangements involving Iran and would necessarily extend beyond strictly bilateral understandings with Washington to encompass the broader regional deterrence system that Iran spearheads. In practice, this means that any durable settlement would have to account not only for Iran's own security, but also for the regional alliances that now operate under its security umbrella, including close allies such as Hezbollah, who have become integral to its deterrence. I think she nailed it here. And at the end of the day, for Iran, nowadays to go to such a war of this magnitude and with all the risks that come with it, if you accept a ceasefire agreement without solving the root cause of these continuous aggressions against Iran, which is going to be repeated and copied in the near future, it makes no sense for you to stop the war now that you are the one who is punching your enemy and hitting where it hurts the most, and that is the economy. And Donald Trump, remember, guys, he came on the platform, he was elected on the platform that he will bring economic prosperity to his people. But now not only his own people are suffering, but also Europeans and non-Europeans all around the world. Therefore, for Iran, seeing that the Americans are in a position of vulnerability and asking for a ceasefire is an opportunity for them to increase the demands during the negotiations, instead of being treated like you are suspicious, you're the one who's causing all this havoc, you're the one who has to compromise, you're the one who has to give up on your missile program, ballistic missile program, drone program, nuclear program, and that you have to give up on your energy infrastructure and your energy sovereignty for the BP and other American companies all around the world. You have to give up and give up and give up and give up for them to stop a conflict against you, or you have to give up and stay naked so that they could come and carve up your country. I think in this case, especially in Iran, being a nation state, being a strong nation state, having state institutions that respect itself and respects its people and the national interests of their own people, a compromise of this sort to the Americans means basically you standing naked without deterrence, without sovereignty, without energy sovereignty, and the Americans will come not only carve up your sovereignty, but they will carve up your economy. So for them, the cost of the war makes more sense for them to continue this war, basically, than accept any sort of ceasefire agreement. And I'm not here to give any wishful thinking. So my opinion, I'm explaining here what the Americans, what the Iranians are thinking, in my opinion, and why they are proceeding with this conflict instead of accepting a ceasefire agreement. Guys, if you like this stream, please hit the like button. Thumbs up before leaving this stream. I would really appreciate it. I would be very grateful for you if you do that. And also check if you're subscribed to this YouTube channel. 40% of you are not subscribed to Syriana Analysis. It would really help me with growing this channel. And this is an independent channel, guys. I do all the work myself. I prepare myself, the technicalities, the graphics, the articles, the thumbnails, the titles, the descriptions, and everything is doing myself. So if you appreciate it and if you like to support the independent work I'm doing here, please become a patron. The link is scrolling on the screen, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. If you don't like to use Patreon, there are different other means in the description below or pinned in the first comment. Thank you so much for watching this stream and listening to this stream, guys, whether on YouTube or on Rumble. And special thanks to our moderators, Red Access and Johan, for being present today in the live chat. And I will see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. Peace be upon you and upon your families, and peace for the entire Middle East. Salam.